Microsoft has had a ton of successes with Xbox, but what about the times they screwed up? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 Microsoft Xbox mistakes they want you to forget. Number 10, that time they announced the Xbox One console would shift the focus to home entertainment instead of games. Which, by the way, has got to be one of the worst ideas ever. When you've had such a successful game console for so many years, it's really hard to imagine what kind of brain worms you must have that you would say, it's not really gonna be gaming focused anymore. And yeah, they did show off Halo. It's not like they completely removed the emphasis from games, but Sony realized exactly the mistake they made and took advantage of it, being like, PlayStation, it's a games console, you know? Microsoft had to pull this massive course correction in which they garnered a number of headlines saying Microsoft shifts emphasis of Xbox One console to games, which, I mean, even when you're reporting on them doing the good thing, that sounds so ridiculous and dumb. Number 9, the HoloLens. Hey, remember what was supposed to be a really cool augmented reality project in which you could put a headset on and play Minecraft in your living room? Do you remember that tech demo? It was super slick, really cool, and got me personally excited about the HoloLens. And then nothing really happened, and then they did the HoloLens 2, and what? Like, I don't even know if it got released to retail. It's that nothing. They screwed up a demo pretty badly, having to literally stop in the middle of it, and the demo itself wasn't even that impressive in the first place. And the HoloLens 2, the second generation of this technology that's been shown to us over a course of years, is still only available for developers. What probably should have been something amazing is kinda meh in every way. Moving on to number 8, when for the Xbox 360, Microsoft decided, you know what? We don't need to do an upgrade as far as storage media is concerned. Yes, the PlayStation 3 is going to have Blu-ray. We know. We're going to use DVD. Yeah. Which, as you know, like comparing Blu-ray and DVD is a massive technical limitation. A DVD holds 4.7 gigabytes of data, while a Blu-ray holds 50 gigabytes of data. It's not even close. And to mitigate things on the movie release watching, Microsoft released an HD DVD accessory, which was a format that just didn't have a chance compared to Blu-ray. They literally discontinued it a couple of years later. Nobody was buying movies on HD DVD because, well, everybody who bought a PlayStation 3 had a Blu-ray player. Not that the PlayStation 3 outsold the Xbox 360 by any stretch, but just like with regular DVD, with the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3 vastly expanded the adoption of Blu-ray. At number 7, the original Xbox One cost $500.
$499 in the US, and 499 euros in European markets, and 429 pounds in the UK.
Which was just a ridiculous price when compared to the $400 PlayStation 4, which they had already emphasized is concentrated on games. Games was the drum they were beating. This pricing mistake was such a big flub for them, they're still talking about it when they talk about the Xbox Series X. They've said specifically that they intend to rectify this problem, which indicates this many years in that it was such a huge mistake and denied them a lot of momentum at the launch of the console war for this generation. I mean, if you think about it, when the original Xbox One launched, they were dealing with the perception that they couldn't stay on a single course, first announcing that they were going to focus on home entertainment and then on games, and then that you were stuck with a Kinect, and then that it was $100 more than its competitor. It was just really not a good start. At number 6, the Red Ring of Death. If you remember the original Xbox 360's launch and the Red Ring of Death, you would remember just how absolutely bonkers that whole thing was. And it ended up costing them literally $1 billion. The reason for that is because they ended up having to extend their warranty to 3 years to replace and repair every single Red Ring of Death Xbox because, well, let's just say it was so many of them, it was very clearly not something they were going to just skirt by on. People aren't just going to spend another few $100s on a new console because the other one they bought literally doesn't turn on. Peter Moore has said if they hadn't spent that over $1 billion, they never would have been able to make the Xbox One, because consumer faith would have been shattered to such a point that there wouldn't have been a point. And at number 5, the fact that the Xbox 360 itself would scratch the discs that you put into it, eventually to the point of not working. Yes, not only would the console overheat and eventually not be even able to turn on, the Xbox 360 actually scratched discs. As in, you would put in a disc, and as it would read data from it, it may slowly scratch it. Now, anyone even vaguely familiar with discs knows that's really bad, and it's definitely not something that anybody wanted to hear could be reproduced in a lab, which is what people had to do in order to confirm this was happening. Now keep in mind, this only affected less than 1% of Xbox 360s, so while it obviously isn't good in any way, it was significantly less bad than the Red Ring of Death, at least in that if you had an Xbox 360, you at least weren't more than likely going to experience it. At number 4, and this is a really big one, we mentioned it when we were talking about the pricing of the Xbox One, how they really flubbed that, but part of the reason for the pricing was the fact that the Kinect was mandatory, and that was probably the dumbest thing they've ever done. I mean, they probably could have even gotten over the fact that they had announced it as an all-in-one entertainment device rather than as a games console, which is the reason people buy it, obviously. But they decided they needed to make it mandatory to have a Kinect with it, which most likely is the reason for the inflated price. And no one wanted a Kinect. Literally 0 people wanted a Kinect. Because, not really a lot of games for it were good. Some of them were definitely passable, but they were really not much more than gimmicks. It was kind of like VR without the VR. They ended up forcing about 29 million of these things onto people, and to be clear, that's the reason why people didn't want it. Probably more so than the fact that it was stupid. People looked at the Wii as a massive gimmick until, wow, it wasn't. It was one of the most successful consoles ever to be made, but you didn't really have a choice, and it also really was clear that it didn't do a lot as far as all of the games that you would typically buy an Xbox for, the Gears series, for instance, Halo. In a lot of ways, it was viewed as kind of a distraction from the reasons you would want an Xbox, and one that you had to have, which is super annoying. At number 3, let's talk about games they have canceled, which they really shouldn't have, and also delays on certain games that really, So the first one I want to bring up is Scalebound, a game that they were having Platinum Games make as an exclusive for the Xbox One that never materialized. On a console that needed exclusives probably more than any previous generation needed exclusives. Then of course there's the Fable series, which should have had another mainline game, but they screwed up the relationship with the developer pretty bad and got a couple of really weird games in Fable Heroes, which is a beat 'em up, and Fable The Journey, which is a Kinect game that no one wanted. In fact, it made people angry on account it wasn't Fable, it was Fable Kinect. Go back to the previous point and kind of understand the connotation of making a game like that exclusively Kinect, totally changing the game. Then of course there's games that we wanted for a long time, like Crackdown 3, which were continually delayed to the point where unless it was anything other than something major, it would of course be viewed as a dud, and that's exactly what happened. Crackdown 3 kinda sucks. And it should be said how much I wanted that game through the years. We have talked about that so many times on this damn channel. At number 2, there were barely any exclusives for the entire Xbox One life cycle, and the ones they introduced, like Sea of Thieves, kinda took forever and didn't really do what we wanted them to. There's a big lack of content and, So what Microsoft decided to do was buy a bunch of game studios. And some of them are obviously very smart purchases that they seem to not regret. like Ninja Theory, because they're showing off the new Senua game as an exclusive for the new Xbox as a almost tech demo for the console. But let's keep in mind that Microsoft has bought studios in the past, and they often close them. Fossa Studios is one, Digital Anvil another, Ensemble, the people behind Halo Wars. We mentioned Fable, their developer Lionhead Studios. Microsoft bought them in 2006, totally destroyed them, closed them in 2016. I mean, they didn't technically close Bungie, but they really screwed up with Bungie. Bungie's basically outliving their best life, totally at Microsoft's detriment. We'll see what happens with the new developers. Hopefully, they will not repeat the mistakes of the past. And finally, at number 1, the golden goose of all of their mistakes. An Xbox One announcement error that was actually bigger than announcing it would be an all-in-one entertainment console with less of a focus on games. The Xbox One DRM announcement. And just to be clear, the industry has, by no stretch, not basically gone in the direction that they announced on stage. There's so much online DRM now. But even now in 2020, the internet infrastructure in the United States is not great. There's a lot of people who do not have an always-on internet connection. Now, never mind going all the way back to when they announced the Xbox One and said in order to play, you're going to have to be connected to the internet. It's going to have to check that you really own the game. Another part of this was they wanted to bring down the used games industry, which, I mean, is happening again anyway as downloads become the norm. But still, this was a dick move on their part, and they had to go back on it almost immediately. It was that big of a backlash. What were some of the biggest mistakes Microsoft made with the Xbox brand through the years? You remember. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and if you like this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe and enable all notifications. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.